Sometimes when you're doing data engineering, you want synthetic data. You want to create a schema of data with tables in it and data in those tables that represent something that will be useful to you as you do other things, for example, building a demonstration or testing something. Our Genesis data agents have the ability to create synthetic data. It's one of their core data engineering blueprints. Blueprints are methodologies our agents can follow to do certain things. Let's look at the synthetic data generation blueprint and see what it involves. You can see that this blueprint has a series of phases. It has 6 different phases that the agent will follow in order to generate synthetic data, either from an existing schema to repopulate it with synthetic data or to generate an entirely new schema full of synthetic data. Each blueprint in Genesis has a series of phases. We can see what those phases are. Each of these phases has a series of actions the agent will take to perform that phase. And each phase has a set of context documents that are fed into it and a set of exit criteria the agent needs to complete before the agent is allowed to proceed to the next phase. This is part of how we keep our agents on track and performing work. This view lets us see those phases for this blueprint in a series of phases, and you can see the document and context information that's going to be passed from phase to phase as the agent performs this work. So to kick off this mission to create some synthetic data, I'll press the Start Mission button. And we have to give it a couple notes. We need to tell it what kind of synthetic data we want and the other requirements we have for the synthetic data. In this case, I'm going to give it pointers to a document I already have in the agent's Git system, which is a series of business questions that we want to be able to answer from asset management data. So the data that we want the agent to create is raw asset management data, basically trade positions, portfolio positions, stuff like that, so that we'll be able to generate later on a bronze, silver, and gold schema. And then dashboards and agents that can answer these types of questions. Best performing funds, consistent funds ranking within their peer groups, assets management, assets under management growth, things like that. A series of business questions that we want this raw data to eventually answer. The other thing we want the agent to do is think about a dashboard that we want to create. So we have a sketch of a dashboard, which is kind of like the kind of thing we want the raw data to be able to fulfill. So in order to kick off this agent, we are going to go back to the blueprint, and in the kickoff notes, I'm just going to provide a link to these 2 things I just showed you, the image and then the question list, and tell the agent that that's what we want basically the synthetic data to be able to fulfill. So to start the agent off on this mission, I just say create mission, and that kicks off the process of the agent working through all those phases and all those steps to create a schema full of synthetic data that will meet the specifications that I just told it. And this mission has kicked off. The agent will start to go through and perform the work by following the phases, following a checklist for each phase. This does take a while, so I'm going to fast forward, if you will, and I'm going to show you one that I did before, cooking show style. And the best way to show this is using our replay capability. I'm just going to use this little DVR control at the top. I'm just going to start to replay what the agent did as it performed this work. You can see I did this before. It took 137 minutes. So the agent worked for over 2 hours, which is great that it can work for long periods of time to do important work following a detailed process. We can see the agent went through these various phases. I'm replaying at 15x speed right now. As it went through, for example, phase 1, if we just pause for a moment and open up phase 1, we can see here's what phase 1 is about, understanding the context for the data that we want to create. We need to understand it. And this is the steps the agent followed and the work that it did to understand that before it moved on to phase 2. And you can see some of the documents that the agent created. Our agents do a lot of documentation. They write a lot of stuff, which is useful to provide context for themselves as they do firework or for other agents or for humans as well. So we can see the industry context the agent has written up based on understanding this industry, and then it's proposed a data set. And the documents oftentimes have diagrams in them that the agents create to help understand and show kind of what they're planning on doing. In this case, the agents understood that we want to create a raw schema, which will later fall into a bronze, silver, and gold medallion structure and eventually into a dashboard. But at this point, the agent has properly understood that what we want is raw schema, and it started to propose the tables and the types of information, not only the rows and columns, but also it's starting to think about the patterns that we want this data to have in it so that the dashboard that we create will, at the end of the process, have interesting patterns and not just flat data or unrealistic data patterns in it. So that's one of the things it's thinking about as well. One of the phases of our synthetic data blueprint is exactly that, to kind of understand how the data should be laid out. So this is showing us as the agent kind of did the work. We can speed up this replay just like a DVR, go a little faster. I'll go all the way up to 90x, and we can watch the agent go through and do a bunch of stuff. The thread on the right is kind of showing the agent's chain of thought as it's doing this work. It's calling a bunch of tools. Genesis has over 100 tools. This agent is using a bunch of them right now as it's doing the work to write files, think about things, create programs. In this case, it's going to be using Python programs to actually generate the synthetic data. So it's starting to think about that, and we can look and watch as it does that work. You can see, for example, it's already written a program, generate data cleaned up high. You can always click on any of these things to see what it's actually created and what it's doing. Here, for example, it thought about some special cases that it wants to handle. So it does a lot of thinking and a lot of coding and a lot of testing. And at the end of the day, at the end of this process, it's almost done here in the replay, we can see that it's created a full synthetic schema of data. Just fast forward all the way to the end. You can now see that this blueprint has ended, and we have a bunch of information about the data that it's created, along with a handoff document that is able to be handed back to the agent to the next phase, which will be to go through bronze, silver, and gold kind of medallion data engineering on the road of this raw data becoming into that dashboard. So we can see the data that was created. So this is our data viewer. The agent has actually created this raw BU1 schema, and we can see that it has created, by running that some of those programs, it's created a table, for example, of trade activity, a table of various products. This is all, again, synthetic data. It's all not sensitive, all synthetically generated, but it represents a kind of a typical scenario for this type of company in this type of industry for this type of raw data set. So it serves as a great input to the next phase that we would eventually want, because our goal, again, is to get that dashboard. And the next phase in this case would be source to target mapping, taking this synthetic data that we just found as a source and going through a different set of steps to do basically understanding how to build out a bronze, a silver, and a gold layer from this data. And once that's done, we would go into a data engineering. We could use DBT, we could use Snowpark, you could use Databricks to actually take the source to target mappings that this blueprint would generate and then create an actual render the data into a bronze, silver, and gold medallion layer, which once you do that, and I'll show that in future videos, you can then have Genesis build dashboards on, or you could use build agents to answer questions to business users. But for example, here's the actual rendered dashboard that Genesis agent created once it went through the other steps on top of this raw data. So here's the end result data. This is the raw. This is based on that raw data that we just showed the generation of. You can see it has pretty good patterns. It's pretty good things that look like you would expect things to look like in this type of dashboard in a real data set. So that was a quick demonstration of synthetic data generation in Genesis. Again, one of our core blueprints that come with Genesis come out of the box with our agents, as generating synthetic data can be very useful to a variety of data engineering projects. Thanks.